The universe had a beginning. Genesis 1:1 opens with a declaration that would have seemed absurd to most ancient civilizations. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Written around 1400 BC, this statement directly contradicted the prevailing cosmological beliefs of surrounding cultures. The ancient Greeks, Egyptians, and Babylonians all maintained that the universe was eternal, with matter existing in endless cycles without any true starting point. Aristotle himself argued for an eternal cosmos, a view that dominated Western thought for centuries. The Bible stood alone in claiming that time, space, and matter all had a definite beginning. This remained a philosophical curiosity until the 20th century, when Belgian priest and physicist Georges Lemaitre proposed what would become the Big Bang Theory in 1927. Edwin Hubble's observations in 1929 confirmed the universe was expanding, suggesting it originated from a single point. The discovery of cosmic microwave background radiation in 1964 by Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson provided the smoking gun evidence. Modern physics now accepts that the universe began approximately 13.8 billion years ago in a massive expansion event, vindicating the ancient biblical claim that existence itself had a beginning. Light existed before the sun. The Genesis creation account presents what seemed like an obvious error for millennia. Light appears on day 1, but the sun, moon, and stars aren't created until day 4. Ancient critics and skeptics mocked this apparent contradiction, asking how light could possibly exist without a luminous source. For centuries, this sequence puzzled even faithful scholars who struggled to reconcile the text with observable reality. However, modern astrophysics has revealed something remarkable. Following the Big Bang, light energy existed long before the first stars formed. The photon epoch began mere seconds after the initial expansion, when the universe cooled enough for photons to exist independently. For the first 380,000 years, the universe was opaque, filled with a hot plasma that scattered light. When electrons and protons combined during recombination, the universe became transparent, and light could travel freely, creating what we now detect as the cosmic microwave background radiation. The first stars didn't ignite until approximately 100 to 200 million years after the Big Bang, during what astronomers call the reionization period. This means light in various forms existed for millions of years before stellar bodies formed. What ancient readers dismissed as biblical error actually aligns with our current understanding of cosmic chronology, where diffuse light energy preceded concentrated stellar sources. Earth was formless and covered in water. Genesis 1:2 describes the early Earth in surprisingly specific terms: formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. This depiction of a primordial water world covered in darkness seemed like mere poetic mythology to generations of readers. Ancient Near Eastern creation myths typically portrayed Earth emerging from violent battles between gods and chaos monsters, not from a simple water-covered sphere. Yet modern planetary science has confirmed an Earth history remarkably similar to this ancient description. Our planet formed approximately 4.5 billion years ago from the accretion of cosmic debris, initially existing as a molten hellscape with no solid crust. Following intense bombardment by asteroids and comets between 4.1 and 3.8 billion years ago, the surface gradually cooled and water vapor condensed into liquid oceans. Evidence from ancient zircon crystals found in Jack Hills, Australia, suggests liquid water existed on Earth's surface as early as 4.4 billion years ago. The early Earth was indeed a global ocean with little to no exposed continental crust, exactly as Genesis describes. Land masses emerged gradually through volcanic activity and plate tectonics over hundreds of millions of years. Even today, water covers approximately 71% of Earth's surface, a remnant of our planet's aquatic origins. Life began in the waters. The Genesis creation narrative presents an intriguing biological sequence that contradicted ancient assumptions about life's origins. According to Genesis 1:20-21, God created sea creatures and birds before land animals, with aquatic life emerging first from the waters. Most ancient cultures had no systematic understanding of life's progression and often depicted land creatures as equally primordial as marine life. The biblical sequence, however, broadly aligns with what paleontology and evolutionary biology have revealed about life's actual timeline on Earth. The earliest life forms emerged in Earth's oceans approximately 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago as simple single-celled prokaryotes. Complex multicellular marine organisms didn't appear until roughly 600 million years ago, with the Cambrian explosion around 541 million years ago, marking an extraordinary diversification of ocean life. Fish evolved approximately 530 million years ago, thriving in aquatic environments long before anything substantial lived on land. The first land plants emerged around 470 million years ago, followed by early land arthropods approximately 430 million years ago. Tetrapods, the first vertebrates to venture onto land, appeared roughly 375 million years ago, having evolved from lobe-finned fish. While Genesis telescopes billions of years into days and doesn't explain mechanisms, the fundamental sequence from water to land matches the fossil record remarkably well, presenting a progression that ancient observers had no way to verify through direct evidence. Blood is the source of life. Leviticus 17:11 contains a striking physiological statement, written approximately 1400 BC, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood." This declaration stood in contrast to various ancient beliefs about what sustained human life, with many cultures attributing vitality to breath. The heart as an independent organ, or an immaterial spirit completely separate from physical substances. While blood loss obviously resulted in death, the actual mechanism and function remain mysterious to ancient peoples. The Bible uniquely identified blood itself as the carrier of life, a claim that wouldn't be scientifically validated for thousands of years. William Harvey's revolutionary discovery of blood circulation in 1628 began unveiling blood's true role, though its full complexity took centuries more to understand. Modern medicine has confirmed that blood performs the essential life-sustaining functions the Bible attributed to it. Red blood cells transport oxygen from lungs to every cell in the body, without which tissues die within minutes. White blood cells form the immune system's mobile defense force, fighting infections and diseases throughout the body. Platelets enable clotting to prevent fatal hemorrhaging from injuries. Plasma carries nutrients, hormones, and waste products, maintaining the chemical balance necessary for survival. An average adult has approximately 5 liters of blood, and losing more than 2 liters often proves fatal without transfusion. The biblical prohibition against consuming blood was based on recognizing its sacred role as life's carrier, a principle that protected ancient Israelites from blood-borne pathogens, while modern medicine has validated blood's absolutely central role in sustaining human life. Quarantine for infectious disease. Leviticus chapters 13 and 14 contain remarkably detailed medical protocols that wouldn't be scientifically justified for another 3 millennia. These passages outline comprehensive quarantine procedures for individuals showing symptoms of infectious skin diseases, likely including what we now know as leprosy and other contagious conditions. The regulations required infected individuals to be isolated outside the camp, away from the healthy population. A priest would conduct examinations, and if symptoms persisted after 7 days, the quarantine continued for another week. Contaminated clothing had to be washed or burned, and even houses showing signs of spreading contamination were addressed through specific cleansing rituals or demolition. These practices were instituted around 1400 BC, roughly 3,400 years before Louis Pasteur developed germ theory in the 1860s, and Robert Koch identified specific disease-causing bacteria in the 1880s. Ancient civilizations surrounding Israel had no comparable systematic approach to controlling disease spread, resulting in devastating epidemics that ravaged populations. The Black Death that swept through Europe between 1347 and 1351 killed an estimated 75 to 200 million people. Suffering that could have been dramatically reduced had biblical quarantine principles been understood and applied. Modern epidemiology still employs quarantine periods of 7 to 14 days for many infectious diseases, including the recent COVID-19 pandemic protocols. The Israelites' practices prevented epidemic spread through their communities millennia before anyone understood the invisible microorganisms that actually caused infections, demonstrating either remarkable empirical observation or knowledge that transcended their era's scientific understanding. Circumcision on the 8th day, Genesis 17:12 and Leviticus 12:3 contain a peculiarly specific command that puzzled observers for millennia. Male infants must be circumcised precisely on the 8th day of life, not the 7th, 9th, or any other day. Ancient cultures that practiced circumcision typically performed it at various ages, from infancy to adolescence, with no apparent medical reasoning for specific timing. The biblical mandate seemed arbitrarily precise until modern hematology revealed something extraordinary about human infant development. Newborn babies have dangerously low levels of vitamin K, which is essential for producing prothrombin and other clotting factors that prevent hemorrhaging. Vitamin K isn't transferred efficiently across the placenta, and newborns haven't yet developed the intestinal bacteria necessary to synthesize it. At birth, prothrombin levels stand at only about 30% of normal adult levels, making surgery extremely risky. However, as gut bacteria colonize the infant's digestive system, starting immediately after birth, vitamin K production begins. This process takes several days to reach effective levels. Remarkably, prothrombin concentration peaks on the 8th day of life, reaching approximately 110% of normal adult levels, actually higher than at any other point in childhood. Dr. S.I. McMillan documented this phenomenon in the 1950s, noting that day 8 provides optimal clotting capacity naturally. Before modern medicine introduced synthetic vitamin K injections at birth, the 8th day was genuinely the safest time for this procedure, minimizing bleeding risk. A command written thousands of years before anyone understood blood chemistry somehow specified the exact optimal day, demonstrating knowledge impossible for the ancient era without either extraordinary empirical observation or insight that transcended contemporary medical understanding. The hydrological cycle. Ecclesiastes 1:7 contains a deceptively simple statement that actually describes a complex meteorological process. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. Job 36:27-28 adds detail. He draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain to the streams. These passages, written between 1000 and 400 BC, accurately describe the complete hydrological cycle centuries before it was scientifically understood. Ancient Greek philosophers, including Aristotle, incorrectly theorized that rain resulted from condensed air rather than evaporated water, and they couldn't explain how rivers continuously flowed into oceans without overflowing them. The complete water cycle wasn't scientifically documented until the 17th century, when French scientists Pierre Perrault and Edmé Mariotte conducted measurements demonstrating that rainfall was sufficient to account for river flow. The cycle works precisely as the biblical texts describe. Solar energy causes ocean water to evaporate, rising as invisible water vapor into the atmosphere. As this vapor rises and cools, it condenses around particles forming clouds. When condensation accumulates sufficiently, precipitation falls as rain or snow. This water collects in streams and rivers, which flow downhill, returning eventually to the oceans, completing the cycle that begins again. The Bible's description captures this entire process accurately, including the crucial insight that water somehow returns from the sea to its original elevated sources, a concept that baffled ancient observers who couldn't see evaporation occurring. While surrounding cultures developed elaborate mythologies involving gods pouring water from celestial vessels, the Hebrew scriptures contained a remarkably accurate description of Earth's actual water distribution system, demonstrating observational knowledge or revelation far ahead of contemporary scientific understanding. The Earth is a sphere. Isaiah 40:22, written approximately 700 BC, contains an intriguing astronomical reference. He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth. The Hebrew word chug, used here, can mean circle, sphere, or roundness, and its interpretation has sparked considerable debate among scholars. Job 26:10, possibly written even earlier between 2000 and 1500 BC, states, "He inscribed a circle on the face of the waters at the boundary between light and darkness," which some interpret as describing Earth's curved horizon. During the period these texts were written, most ancient Near Eastern cultures maintained cosmologies featuring a flat Earth beneath a solid dome-like sky. The Babylonians, Egyptians, and early Mesopotamian civilizations all depicted Earth as fundamentally flat with various mythological supports. Ancient Greek philosophers debated Earth's shape, with Pythagoras suggesting sphericity around 500 BC and Aristotle providing arguments for a round Earth around 350 BC, based on observations like ships disappearing hull first over the horizon. Eratosthenes famously calculated Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy around 240 BC using shadow measurements. However, these Greek insights came after the biblical texts were written and didn't represent widespread knowledge. Ferdinand Magellan's circumnavigation between 1519 and 1522 provided practical proof of Earth's sphericity, though the concept remained debated in some circles for centuries. Photographs from space in the 1960s finally provided incontrovertible visual evidence, showing Earth's equatorial diameter of approximately 12,756 kilometers. While the Hebrew word choice doesn't definitively prove the biblical authors understood Earth's three-dimensional sphericity, the language suggests roundness rather than flatness, contrasting with the cosmological assumptions of surrounding cultures and potentially indicating knowledge beyond typical ancient understanding. The stars are innumerable. Genesis 15:5 records God's promise to Abraham. "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them." Jeremiah 33:22 later echoes this imagery. "I will make the descendants of David my servant, and the Levites who minister before me, as countless as the stars in the sky, and as measureless as the sand on the seashore." These statements, written around 1400 BC and 600 BC respectively, claimed stars were beyond human counting capacity. This assertion seemed questionable to ancient astronomers who could actually count visible stars with reasonable accuracy. On a clear night far from artificial light, the human eye can observe approximately 2,500 to 5,000 individual stars depending on atmospheric conditions and location. Ancient astronomers created comprehensive catalogs attempting to document every visible star. Hipparchus compiled a catalog of roughly 850 stars around 130 BC, while Ptolemy's later Almagest listed approximately 1,000 stars. These relatively modest numbers made the biblical claim of uncountability seem like obvious hyperbole or poetic exaggeration. However, Galileo's telescope in 1609 revolutionized astronomy by revealing countless stars invisible to the naked eye, showing that every dark patch of sky actually contained thousands more stars than anyone had imagined. Modern astronomy has since confirmed the truly staggering scale the Bible suggested. Our Milky Way galaxy alone contains an estimated 100 to 400 billion stars. The observable universe holds approximately 200 billion trillion stars, written as 2 followed by 23 zeros. The Hubble Space Telescope's deep field images reveal billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, stretching across distances so vast that their light has traveled for billions of years to reach us. What ancient observers could count in thousands, we now know exists in incomprehensible quantities, vindicating the biblical assertion that stars truly are innumerable, a claim that contradicted all available observational evidence when it was written, ocean currents and paths in the sea. Psalm 8:8 contains a curious phrase that inspired one of oceanography's founding fathers. The birds in the sky and the fish in the sea, all that swim the paths of the seas. Written around 1000 BC, this poetic verse seemed to suggest organized pathways within the ocean, a concept that contradicted ancient understanding of seas as formless, chaotic expanses of water without structure or predictable patterns. For centuries, mariners viewed oceans as vast obstacles to be crossed, rather than flowing rivers with discoverable routes. Matthew Fontaine Maury, an American naval officer born in 1806, reportedly became bedridden after a serious injury and asked his son to read the Bible to him. When they reached Psalm 8:8, Maury became convinced the verse indicated actual pathways existed within the oceans. Despite skepticism from contemporaries, he dedicated himself to studying ocean patterns, collecting data from ship logs, and mapping wind patterns and water temperatures. His systematic research revealed the Gulf Stream and other major ocean currents that function like rivers within the sea, following predictable paths that ships could utilize for faster, more efficient travel. Benjamin Franklin had earlier charted a rough version of the Gulf Stream in 1770, but Maury's detailed work in the 1850s comprehensively mapped multiple currents and established oceanography as a scientific discipline. His publications revolutionized maritime navigation by showing captains how to follow these invisible highways, dramatically reducing travel times. Modern oceanography has since revealed the global ocean conveyor belt, a system of warm and cold currents circulating throughout Earth's oceans in predictable patterns. These currents do indeed follow distinct paths influenced by water temperature, salinity, Earth's rotation, and continental boundaries, exactly as Psalm 8:8 poetically suggested, thousands of years before anyone scientifically documented their existence. Entropy and the universe wearing out. Multiple biblical passages describe the universe as temporary and degrading, using strikingly consistent imagery across different authors and eras. Psalm 100:225-26 states, "In the beginning, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like a garment." Isaiah 51:6 echoes this theme. "Lift up your eyes to the heavens. Look at the earth beneath. The heavens will vanish like smoke. The earth will wear out like a garment, and its inhabitants die like flies." Hebrews 1:10-11 in the New Testament repeats this imagery. "They will perish, but you remain. They will all wear out like clothing." These descriptions of a universe growing old and wearing out like deteriorating fabric directly contradicted Greek philosophical assumptions about an eternal, unchanging cosmos that would exist forever in essentially its current state. Aristotle and subsequent philosophers maintained that celestial bodies were perfect, eternal, and immutable, a view that dominated Western thought for nearly 2 millennia. The biblical perspective remained theologically significant, but scientifically unverifiable until the mid-19th century. In 1850, German physicist Rudolf Clausius formulated the second law of thermodynamics, introducing the concept of entropy. This law states that in any closed system, entropy, or disorder, always increases over time. Applied to the universe as a whole, this means the cosmos is gradually moving toward maximum entropy, often called heat death, where all energy becomes evenly distributed and no work can be performed. Stars are burning out, converting matter into energy that dissipates into space. Eventually, all stars will exhaust their fuel. Galaxies will fade, and the universe will become a cold, dark, lifeless expanse. The biblical imagery of the universe wearing out like old clothing precisely captures this thermodynamic reality discovered thousands of years later, showing that ancient authors somehow anticipated modern physics' conclusion that the universe has a definite expiration date. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.